The delegation of cattlemen and National Farmers Federation members appears to have made some impact on the President. The meeting gained media coverage in the United States, highlighting Australian fears of EEC dumping in Asian markets and America's own restrictive trade practices, especially towards beef imports. At home today, after his historic meeting, Ed Wright says George Bush was prepared to listen. Mr Bush will now take virtually the same trade message to Japan on America's behalf that he heard from Australian farmers. It's an irony that may result in America at least making some concessions in their trading relationships with Australia, but no real reform is expected in the near future.
At least we've got a much better understanding with the United States about where we stand and our position, which we didn't have before.
The bulk carrier Zincmaster was being manoeuvred by tugs from the Steelworks Channel toward a berth at the Western Basin. Astonished restaurant patrons and bystanders watched the ship veer off course and head for Queen's Wharf.
Couldn't believe it. I was just telling the kids, he's going to hit it, and he did.
It just seemed to get closer and closer and closer.
It was within metres by the time they actually threw the anchor out, with the tug trying to push the stern around at the time, but very close.
A hastily tossed anchor as the ship began to scrape bottom halted its progress in the nick of time. The bow glanced off a pylon but then stuck on the mud. Tugboats freed the carrier late this afternoon and guided it to the Western Basin, where it will undergo an inspection and MSB inquiry.
This is the way thousands of hectares of land was dug up for crops in the days before the combustion engine. At Oxley Island near Taree, 40 draft horses and their drivers were put to the test in the New South Wales Ploughing Championships. But while the competitors have a passion for the giant animals, they can't see a revival in horsepower.
The economics of it is just not there anymore. Perhaps in the future when fuel gets dearer there may be some reason for it, but it'll have to be a hell of a lot dearer.
At Budgewoi on the Central Coast, horse action of a faster pace. Rodeo riders came from across the country for some high-flying spills. On a wet track, it was a case of eating mud if you went the wrong way, as this 16-year-old rider found out. It was also testing for the barrel competition with the horses losing their grip on the slippery surface. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
In an attempt to raise funds for the State Emergency Service, the Bushfire Brigade and the Cancer Care Unit, the people of Coffs Harbour converged on Jetty Beach in the hope of striking it lucky. For a small cost, participants were given hats and at the sound of the starter gun, swarmed the beach in the hope of finding a paddle pop stick, identifying that they'd won a prize. The treasure, worth a total of $14,000, saw some take home microwaves, toys and holiday vouchers. The fundraising continues tomorrow with a charity race day held at Coffs Harbour Race Club.
A bucket of milk, yes! Ho, 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 and a bucket of milk. We set to see the valiant three,
the slaves and her and him and me,
to seek the monster Grendel, to seek the monster Grendel. 5 days from the shore were we,
fierce tempest tossed the company,
a storm from monster Grendel, a storm from monster Grendel. Sing, row!
We've
We think it was a very, very successful day for Armidale Cricket and the Armidale City Council. We think it was a joint venture between the two bodies, and we think it went off extremely well. The reports were tremendous.
What was the reaction, West Indies-wise, as far as the facilities were concerned?
The West Indies were very, very complimentary about their facilities. Some of them saying it was the best ground they've played in Australia so far on this tour. Mind you, they haven't played on many of the big venues as yet, but for a country suburban ground, we think it's probably the best in country New South Wales.
A few nervous moments as far as the association was concerned on Wednesday, wasn't there?
Very much so, Lou. We spent a lot of time, a lot of effort there, and I'd like to take this chance to thank everyone involved in that. And it was a great effort between the association and the council again. We worked very hard together to get it off the ground.
Wicklow Oval has, of course, had a lot of money spent on it by the Armidale City Council over a number of years. How does it fare from a regional and a national standard?
Well, I've seen a lot of the country grounds in New South Wales. I've seen a lot of the suburban grounds in Brisbane, and also the Brisbane Cricket Ground and Sydney Cricket Ground. As a country ground, it's probably the tops that I've seen. The money's been well spent. The facilities there are good, and we hope to develop the facilities a little more in the future after this match.
What's it going to mean now? Armidale has obviously come of cricketing age.
We think so, yes. We've been pushing for this match for a few years, and it's been a lot of hard work to get the game. We've proved the New South Wales Association now that we can stage it, and we do have the facilities, and we hope that that'll be for bigger and bigger things in the future.
The freighter is a regular visitor to Newcastle Harbour. However, on Saturday, its captain had to deal with a lot more than he bargained for. The ship had taken on about 5,000 tonnes of sulphuric acid at Kooragang. As it routinely negotiated its way through the main shipping channel to the harbour's western basin, it failed to make the turn.
There was a malfunction in the bridge control when the captain attempted to put the vessel into full reverse. The thrust wasn't there and he didn't get full reverse power. So as a consequence he couldn't back off and the vessel was compelled to continue on its forward movement.
The Zincmaster came to rest off Queen's Wharf, much to the astonishment of onlookers. The vessel suffered no damage and no one was injured. According to the Harbour Master's report, the Zincmaster doesn't carry any fuel in the forward section, so at no time was there any danger of pollution. The ship ran aground about 10 metres from the shore.
There is not enough water depth there for a vessel of that size, or all the major commercial vessels in the port. Once they leave the channel, there's not enough water there for them to reach the shoreline.
The Harbour Master says that until the fault is rectified, the ship will require a second tug while carrying out similar manoeuvres. The Zincmaster will leave Newcastle Harbour tomorrow afternoon. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
HMAS Canberra berthed in Newcastle yesterday, cutting short its sea trials when a stabiliser fin on the hull malfunctioned in heavy weather. The Canberra is the last of 6 frigates to have undergone modernisation in a project spanning almost a decade. Australian Defence Industries carried out the work at its Garden Island facility in Sydney. Project manager Peter Simmons says the malfunction will be corrected within days.
This is a routine maintenance that will be done on other vessels as they become available for refitting.
The repairs will be carried out at the Four Jacks floating dock, and there's hope that similar projects may come their way as Australian Defence Industries farms out work previously done at Garden Island. As operations at Garden Island wind down, it's expected that more work will be subcontracted out to smaller companies, and Newcastle is in an excellent location to take advantage of this opportunity.
There is a possibility that, again, on a docking opportunity basis, ships could be brought to Newcastle.
The Canberra will go into dry dock tomorrow and should leave port sometime on the weekend. It's believed the 5 other frigates, including 2 now serving in the Gulf, haven't suffered similar stabiliser problems, even though they've undergone similar refits. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Hi, I'm Luke and welcome to Australia's 16th Jamboree.
How do we do this now?
Hey guys, you sure this is long enough?
What do you think it's going to be like?
It's going to be good. Yeah.
New life and smiles all round from a proud dad and family. Arriving days early was cause for excitement and some desperate moments.
So we packed up everything and hopped in the car, come down to the John Hunter at flashing lights and everything on the way down because we knew we were going to cut it really fine, and we just didn't quite make it. So we got told to pull over by my wife, so we pulled over at 2HD, raced in and asked them to call an ambulance.
Within 5 minutes of being called to 2HD, ambulances were on the scene. 10 minutes after this, a baby boy was born.
It was a perfect textbook birth. 6 minutes after we arrived, we were presented with a fine, healthy baby boy. It was only the circumstances, being born in a boardroom, that threw us a bit. I think it'll go into my memoirs without any doubt.
While Mum was made comfortable, Dad gloated over baby number 3. So how would you describe your feelings now?
Ecstatic. 3 kids, that's enough.
Near Taree, early risers are soaking up a little sunrise serenity and getting an education into the bargain. At Old Bar Beach, a holiday activity program is underway designed to foster awareness amongst beach users about the fragile coastal environment. The program includes tours which incorporate anything from dolphin spotting to activities specially designed to relieve school holiday boredom.
Well, we've got a good program for the kids from about 10 till 12 and from 1:30 to 3. On Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, where the kids can come and do some bushcraft. We get little things from the beach and make little men out of them and things like that with the Banksias and things like that and put eyes on them. Yeah, it's really great for the kids.
For those not inclined to be early risers, there's a later alternative.
We've got nocturnal walks which have been really popular. People have been coming out and we go into the forest and we go spotlighting and see possums and wallabies and bats and things like that out in the forest. It's really great fun.
The program is run in conjunction with the Old Bar Dune Care Group, which received a $1,500 grant to fund the project. If it proves successful, it may be adopted at other beaches.
Swirling black smoke from the fire could be seen in nearby suburbs, signalling immediately that something was wrong at the ICI chemical plant at Mayfield. 3 fire units responded to the emergency, including the hazardous materials unit. Not knowing what they were dealing with, the fire was treated as an emergency situation, as the plant produces a number of hazardous and highly inflammable chemicals. The blaze, however, was contained to this scrubber, once used to control emissions into the atmosphere. According to ICI, this part of the plant was decommissioned in 1986. It made the substances used in making plastic. When the plant was shut, the scrubbers or chimneys were washed free of chemicals. But General Manager Roger Davies says today's situation was still potentially dangerous.
Whenever you see a fire on a plant, it's of major concern, and I'm pleased to see that it was handled very quickly and rapidly.
The cause of the fire remains a mystery. The company has launched its own investigation.
It's an area of the plant that's segregated from our main operation, so it's not used at all. So it's a great mystery to us at the moment as to why it could have started up in this way.
Jodie McKay, NBN News. New South Wales has seen plenty of rain during the last week. According to the experts, it's been caused by a low pressure trough extending from Queensland, which is creating an unstable air mass. The result is widespread thunderstorms from the coast to the ranges. It may be the end of the weekend before the rain dissipates. In the meantime, Aberdeen and Scone, which were hit by a wild thunderstorm yesterday evening, are cleaning up. The wind was so strong that this semi-trailer was picked up and overturned on the New England highway. The driver from Coonabarabran had stopped the unloaded truck near Aberdeen as heavy hail had reduced visibility on the road. He was in the truck at the time but escaped uninjured. Also today, claims by Mayor of Gosford City Council, Alderman Robert Bell, that the flooding of around 20 houses in the Tascott area could have been prevented by the State Rail Authority. According to Alderman Bell, State Rail agreed to improve drainage under the nearby Main Northern Rail line 18 months ago. No work has been done. The line was undermined and 20 houses flooded on Wednesday night during heavy rain. Alderman Bell blames State Rail for not carrying out the promised work. Regional General Manager of the SRA, Colin Cowell, however, denies the claims and says Council and State Rail should be working together to fix the problem. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Craig Anderson from West Wallsend may only be 13, but he already has a fan club. On Saturday night at the Supercross Masters, Craig dominated the junior events, blasting 24 other riders out of contention. The first round of the national competition was marred by a series of heavy spills. 7 riders were taken to hospital. So did the track worry the young star?
On the triples that did with me best mate, Daniel Primer, he broke both of his arms, but I just come out and I just said, don't worry about it, just hit him.
Craig has been riding for 5 years and he's already won 3 national titles. His sponsor buys him 2 new bikes each year, an 80cc and 125, and he's on his way to a full-time career.
I hope to get to America this year, next year, to try and take on the world's best.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Some students couldn't wait for their results to be delivered. Instead, they collected them from the post office. So how did you go?
Alright, not as well as I expected though, but I should have done some more work. 86, a 2 year, so I'm happy. I didn't really get as much as I wanted, but we'll see how we go.
14 Hunter students received a percentage score in the top 1% of the state. 17-year-old Bill Neild from Dungog High was the top pupil in the area. He finished with a near-perfect result, only 0.05% short of full marks.
I was hoping for a high mark, but to see a mark that high, it was really amazing, and I was shocked to see that I got that high, and I just bolted downstairs and told everyone the good news.
Bill attributes part of his success to the teachers at his school, in particular his modern history teacher, who is also his father.
It was a real joy to teach him, and it was a lovely group. The whole class was a very good group to teach.
Bill wants to study arts law at New South Wales University next year, but for many people, Year 13 is not so certain. The Department of School Education has set up HSC advisory centres to help students with course selection and tertiary preferences. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It was in January 1990 that residents of Martin Street first discovered their subdivision was contaminated by copper arsenate. It was left behind in the soil from a timber pole impregnation plant formerly on the site.
August 1988, I moved my family into their new home. It was probably the happiest time of our life, but in 18 months that turned to absolute horror. That night that we were halfway through dinner when it was announced that our home had been built on toxic soil.
At the commemorative ceremony, the residents handed to the Armidale City Council a maple tree which will be planted in the local arboretum, not in the subdivision because it wouldn't survive in the contaminated soil. The group also held an afternoon tea and used the occasion to remember the last 2 years, which have been a horror story for all the residents.
Disbelief that something that is so wrong has gone on so long.
The subdivision to us in the past 2 years, to our family, has just been like a never-ending nightmare. It's just been horrible, and I hope there's an ending very soon.
We feel that it's not our fault. All we did was try to provide a proper home for our children so that we could have our own home, and it's just turned into a nightmare.
The residents are now preparing another submission to the state government for assistance through the newly established Environmental Trust Fund. The plants, up to 2 metres tall, were found in gullies in rocky country on a property called January.
Members of the plantation unit attached to the Drug Enforcement Agency in Sydney have had some information about a crop in this area and most likely on this property. We had a briefing this morning at 7 a.m. to act on that information. We came out here a little after 8 and executed a search warrant.
The police arrested one man immediately, while the other 2 were caught after a chase through the crop. A quantity of dried cannabis was also found in a shed on the property. The plants were destroyed on site after being formally identified by Department of Agriculture officers. The haul had a potential street value of between $8 and $10 million. 747s have been on a regular run to RAF Base Williamtown for a number of years now, but the flights are strictly training runs only. The state-of-the-art 747-400 is one of 14 to join Qantas's upgraded fleet. On board, a first officer undergoing conversion training from the twin-engine 767s to the jumbos. Although the training has been routine for 2 years, it still alarms some members of the public unused to this infrequent sight.
Occasionally we have had people ringing through the police reporting a large civil passenger aircraft in trouble at low level.
Passing motorists often pull up just out of sheer astonishment.
I was quite surprised. I was just driving up to Medowie and it was the last thing I really expected to see.
The arrival of the 747s is now a unique source of entertainment for locals in the know. The 65-metre wingspan is impressive at close range, and even with the aircraft unladen, the tyres are taking about 200 tonnes on each touchdown. For those who cherish the hope that Newcastle will one day have its own international airport, the training run is at least a chance to dream of things to come. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Parthenium weed outbreaks have occurred in pastures throughout the northwest for a number of years. The weed is usually found in Queensland, but an alert landholder in the Malele area discovered this plant on his property. It's been potted for display in the Gunnedah Shire Council chambers. Shire Weed Officer Dave Richards blames its appearance in the northwest on interstate contract harvesters and Queensland traffic through the area.
Over the years we've experienced it's quite obvious that most of our infestations have come from them sources. We've been fortunate that we've been able to maintain what we have got, and good surveillance by everyone in the farming community and council weeds officers and Department of Agriculture staff. We will be able to hold it.
With many people leaving their land for holidays, it's feared the weed could go unnoticed.
One of the problems that we are going to face is that like people going away and the plant seeding, so a little bit of neighbourhood watch over the fence wouldn't go astray either, particularly looking out for strange weeds.
Many competitors are already practising for the big event. They've been getting accustomed to the city's arena for the first ever indoor professional finals.
It creates a lot better atmosphere because these spectators and everything's so close to what's actually happened. They really get the feel of the rodeo and they can sort of feel the excitement that the competitors and that feel, and it's a totally different atmosphere and really exciting.
The action will start on Saturday afternoon and continue through next week. The top 15 competitors in each event on the rodeo circuit will take part in the sudden death contest. All competitors will start on equal footing. The points they've accrued throughout the season don't count at the finals.
So the highest money earner over the 6 rounds is actually going to be the Australian champion. It's a new format and we think a really exciting one. So each night is going to be just jam-packed, full of action. It's going to be great.
Meantime, the finalists in the Miss Rodeo Australia pageant have been welcomed to the city with a mayoral reception. The quest is traditionally held in Warwick in Queensland, but has been transferred to Tamworth. Sharon Patton will hand over the crown to one of the 4 entrants on Monday.
The sounds of country music are already echoing through Tamworth shopping centres as the city prepares to host the 1992 Country Music Festival. Everywhere there are signs that it's that time of year again. The giant guitars are in place and visitors are beginning to flock to the city.
The long weekend's still the big weekend for most people, but it is panning out. In the last couple of years there's been more interest in the earlier part of the festival, and we hope that that continues again this year, and all indications are that it will.
Over the festival's 10 days, between 40 and 50,000 people will make the annual pilgrimage to the city. As a result, accommodation in Tamworth is fully booked, with caravan parks already half full. The visitors centre has been inundated with inquiries.
We're getting up to 50 telephone inquiries a day. The program was just released at the beginning of the week, and we gave out 700 copies of the program on the first day.
Police and local bushfire brigade personnel today destroyed the 3,300 cannabis plants. The Drug Enforcement Agency and local police discovered the plants growing in rocky gullies early yesterday on a Copeton Dam Road property. Arrested over the multi-million-dollar crop, 55-year-old Inverell man Jose Nunes, who is living on the property, and 2 Polish nationals. Nunes has been granted conditional bail, while the other men have been refused bail and remanded in custody. The trio will reappear in court next week. The Phoenix Foundry is one of 2 places in Australia which manufactures bronze plaques for headstones. Residents living close to the foundry claim when bronze is poured at the plant, the emissions make them feel ill. They blame the chemical isocyanate, but the foundry says the substance is not responsible.
Widely used chemical, it's used in many manufacturing processes and materials that you buy, food processing, and we feel there's no problem with it at all.
Mr Rudd says all chemicals used by the foundry have been cleared by WorkSafe. He says the plant has been inspected by the State Pollution Control Commission and meets the necessary standards.
Well, I'm concerned that adjoining residents have been ill-informed. We're very open about this, there's nothing to hide here, and that they've taken this action without consulting us. We, as you say, we operate through all the relevant authorities. We've been approved, it's constantly monitored. We don't use anything unusual. It's foundry products that are available worldwide. And we think it's really quite hysterical, the whole issue.
The foundry has now issued an invitation to any concerned residents to inspect the plant, which Mr Rudd says is completely safe.
Concerned about health and safety of people, in particular our staff, and we've never had any health problems here, and we don't foresee any.
The security guards and dogs are employed by the Newcastle branch of the Webster's Security Group. They'll operate on platforms from Gosford in the south to Toronto, west of Lake Macquarie, and in the Hunter Valley as far as Scone and Dungog. City Rail says the handlers will serve a double role, giving commuters a greater sense of security and discouraging an ongoing wave of vandalism which costs the railway hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. City Rail manager Colin Cowell says commuters have no reason to be alarmed by the new security measures.
The dogs are in the control of experts. I think people will realise that we're serious about security
and I believe it will improve our image as far as taking care of vandalism and graffiti, that type of thing.
The dogs and handlers won't be travelling on trains. City Rail has given the security guards instructions to concentrate on property, which is especially vulnerable to vandalism during the early hours of the morning. State Rail has employed private security firms in the past to patrol properties, but this is the first time they've used guard dogs in such a public display. The use of dogs is on a trial basis, but they could become a familiar part of security on all City Rail platforms from Newcastle to Lithgow in the west and Wollongong in the south. Mr Cowell says the guards will have similar duties to the State Transit Police.
We get incredibly good support from the State Police, the Transit Police branch especially, and they can't be everywhere at the same time, so it's purely to supplement their activities.
Tom Hilston, NBN News.